Welcome back to True Rhymes, the place where we investigate what rhymes are really trying to tell us. Tonight we're going to have a look at an old lady. Now, don't get excited, this isn't a peep show. This is an old lady who's living in a shoe, and she's got shitloads of kids and doesn't know what to do. So we'll just have a bit of a read of what our rhyme's got to say. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do. So she gave them some broth and a big slice of bread and kissed them all soundly and sent them to bed. Now doesn't that sound lovely? I mean honestly, how bloody big was the shoe? Was it a giant shoe left over from the antiquity age when giants roamed the earth? What the hell? Does that make any sense at all? I mean, I don't know. If she had lots of kids, it must have been a hell of a shoe. But you know what? Sometimes the bloomin' made-up fantasy asked more questions than what the reality was. So here's what the rhyme actually said before it got beautified with the whole kissing and going to bed business. I'm going to read you what the original rhyme actually said. It starts off the same. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do. So she gave them some broth without any bread and whipped them all soundly and sent them to bed. I just want you all to keep in mind that all of these rhymes were rhymes before they put nursery in front of them. So they weren't necessarily nursery rhymes to annoy all you lovely mothers that was telling kids these stories. It was never their intention. It was just history in a different format. So throughout history, you would all know that there's one subject that comes up yet and over again. It's the human desire to get rich quick without doing stuff all. You know, the first recorded idea that came up was the lottery that was outside of a church. I think it was St. Peter's Cathedral in England somewhere. Some dude was selling lottery tickets. It doesn't actually record who actually won the lottery. But what an ingenious idea, and look where that ended up. And of course, it wasn't very long and we had the stock market going. Apparently at this time in history, the English had gotten themselves in an awful mess with a big debt for the war they had with France. So they got organised and they had this company called the South Sea Company, and they made a deal with them, who happened to, obviously they had a shit ton of money. So they said, right, I tell you what, if you underwrite the debt, which is around about £30 million, we're going to guarantee you a 5% interest on your money back. And so, whew, hell, you couldn't go too far wrong, could you? So at the start of the South Sea system, when this was all signed up with the government, the people in the know, they had bought some shares at $100. And next thing you know, within the year, the blooming things were worth £1,000. Wow, what's that? 10 times your money. That's pretty crazy. And of course, everybody loves a good deal. So next thing you know, there was all sorts of companies started up all over the shop wanting to get invested into. One I read about, which I thought was kind of interesting, was they were going to get onto the Irish bogs and sell the peat moss. And then there was another one when they were making square cannonballs, for goodness sakes. I don't know too much about warfare in the Dark Ages, but I'm fairly sure cannonballs were around for a reason, because then they roll through the field and take some legs off. I mean, I don't think they bounce real good. Well, they definitely sure as hell don't roll when they're square. But anyway, but my personal favourite was the one that actually raised £2,000 for an adventurous, prosperous company that's not actually allowed to share you the secret as to how they're going to make your fortune. Hell! How cool's that? I think I worked out that that's about £130,000 in today's money. Does that sound a little bit like something that we've had just recently? I think that was the .com bubble or the housing bubble. Hell, we haven't changed much, have we, humanity? We're always wanting to get something for nothing. So as we all know, when there's a grand scheme and everybody's making shitloads of money, the bubble bursts and everybody goes down the toilet. Hell, apparently the story goes that the chambermaids and the butlers that had bought carriages and fancy houses and all the rest of it, well, they lost a fortune, and so they all went back to having to be chambermaids. And the jolly clergy and the other rich folks, everybody went broke. So there was like a big mess. Boy, oh boy, I tell you what, people don't change a hell of a lot anyway, whatever century you're living in. I mean, I don't know, I was thinking, you know, whenever you want to get rich, there's always someone that's got a grand idea to offer you the opportunity to get rich. They just want a little bit of your money and then you can make a fortune. Hell, or buy their book, or, I don't know, do an online training course at the moment. Mind you, having said all of that, I wouldn't have minded of being a bloke who bought some Bitcoin back when they were worth about $1 each. Hell, I was looking at this bloke. Apparently he bought some pizzas, and I think he said it cost him 500 million now. And why is this referencing back to our old woman? You might well ask. Well, the thing is, she wasn't an old woman at all. The old woman was a reference to the Bank of England. That would be sensible, wouldn't it? And what's more, why was she in a shoe? Because apparently if you get the map of England and you turn it just on the right angle, it looks like a shoe from the 1700s. So there you have it. You've got an old woman, which is the Bank of England, and you've got her living in a shoe, which is quite respectable. And of course, now, what was she doing with all these kids? Well, apparently, if you read into between that, it was talking about the fact that she had huge debts that she didn't know what to do with them all. So there's like all these dependents that were like asking for their money back. And there was no way that that was going to happen. So what did they do? They decided that they would give them a little bit of money, which is, you know, what happens when they're going to try and get the hell out of the shit. It's a bit like when a company rolls over today and you're kind of an investor. I reckon the saying goes, you get 20 cents on the dollar if you're really lucky. Well, sometimes you get nothing if it goes broke properly. And then, because of course, you can just imagine the excitement of the general populace. They all got pretty crazy and turned up to Parliament and said, we want our money back. What the hell's going on? This is unacceptable. And so the army and King George and the government, they had to get themselves organised. So they gave them all a good thrashing and sent them away, which is why it was whipped them all soundly and sent them to bed or sent them home. So hell, I don't know, humanity hasn't learned a hell of a lot, has it? I mean, here we are, what are we, I don't know, that was the 1700s and we're in the 2000s. Goodness knows now, but anyway, doesn't really matter. But at least you know, at least you can sleep at night now knowing the fact that it wasn't some decrepit old woman living in a giant shoe. It was actually talking about some messed up crap that happened to some economics. Cool, well if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, like, subscribe, click, support, share, I don't know, all that sort of cool stuff. Hell, you could even put us on your Facebooky page and share us around that way. I don't really know how the internet works. I just happen to be famous on the jolly thing. And if you're so inclined and you'd like this show to survive, don't forget, down here in the Patreon support little window somewhere, you could maybe help us out. Because you know what? None of us have got any money because of the bloody bubble that have got burst.